Thank you, and good afternoon, you stalwart few who are hanging around to the very end of the day. Well done. I sometimes think I'm really stupid. Either that or I am just your average consumer, because I do online banking, I do, all the time. I love it. It's great. And here's the kind of screens that I get. And there are those little moments of doubt that all of us have, right? Is it really my bank? Now, how do I know? Well, obviously, to any tech, the answer is because there's this green shit there. It must be right because there's green. Now, if that was red, I'd know it was an attack, it was fake. But because it's green, it's truly real. So, I'm safe, yeah? Now, if you don't think that's enough, then you might get sort of a little bit more worried about this because, green might not be enough. So what really happened? My machine did a DNS query. This is my bank. And the DNS said, well, if it's your bank, you need to go to 104.97.235.12. And it goes, yeah, okay, I'll do a TCP session. Because the DNS never lies, does it? Obviously, right? Now, hang on a second. Because I didn't know it, but I'm with the Bank of Akamai. Now, they're wonderful people and all that, but I have no bloody idea how I ever became a customer of the Bank of Akamai, because that's who I'm talking to when I went to the address given to me by the DNS. Because when I consult who is, because I believe, I'm just credulous, the Commonwealth Bank of Australia is on an entirely different set of IP addresses. So what's going on? The last of my knowledge, I don't think I'm a customer of the Bank of Akamai. They're nice people, but I'm not their customer. So why is my browser believing things that I don't? How does my browser tell the difference? Okay? So, obviously, it's about voodoo crap. It's about magic, otherwise known as cryptography, yeah? Because that's what makes everything good. It's just sort of someone else tried to figure this out. So obviously it's all about cryptography. And the real key, of course, is something that I hope some of you have read stuff about because it's really fascinating. Asymmetric cryptography, where if I encrypt with one key, you can only decrypt with a different key. You can't use the same key to get it back again. So it's kind of like a key opens the door, but a different key locks it again. And knowledge of one key doesn't give you knowledge of the other. And this is this sort of basic tool that keeps the entire internet security system hanging together. Or so we'd like to think. So, you consult the gurus of mathematics, and the gurus of mathematics tells you this kind of stuff. You select a bloody big prime number, and then a second one, both of them really big. A few hundred digits would be nice, thousands even better, big. You multiply the two together. That's a composite number with a unique pair of prime factors. Now pick the number of numbers that are relatively prime to that. With me so far? This is called maths. It's a lot of fun. So then you pick an even third number, E, which is relatively prime to the last number you thought of, right? That's your public key. Truly, really. The entire security of the internet rests on that relationship, so, learn it. You then pick a second key such that D multiplied by the first number you thought of, E, equals 1 mod that really weird number. That's your private key. Don't tell anyone, not even me. What's E? 3 is a good number. 65535 is a good number. Kind of any number that's relatively prime to that theta n. Now, the beauty about this is that x raised to the power d raised to the power e equals x. Voodoo. And the other thing, if you remember exponentiation, is that x raised to the power d raised to the power e is the same as x raised to the power e raised to the power d. So you can do it in either order, that relationship. So that's really cool. That keeps all of the internet together, including, my little friend, the Commonwealth Bank, right? Why? Well, it all happened just after I connected to Akamai. Because somehow, when I said, hello, Akamai, I think you're the Commonwealth Bank. Back came some stuff, this server hello, that had a whole bunch of goop. And then I said, well, I like your goop, here's some secret goop, let's encrypt. So what I was told was a public key. What I invented from it was a session key. And because I used the public key of the Commonwealth Bank, in theory they could decode it with their private key. And the way I got told their public key was that message just there, that fella. So why did I accept that? What was that certificate? How did my browser go, even though it's Akamai, no, it's really the bank. Akamai, bank, Akamai, bank. Well, if I look at the certificate in my browser, I get to see firstly, that is the public key, it's RSA, it's 2048 bits, we were told this morning, that's a wonderful key length, life is really, really cool. But my browser reckons it's valid. I've never seen this shit before in my life. Why does my browser know more than me about this? You know, how did my browser know that that digital thing was a valid certificate? So what I suspect happened, because they didn't let me in the room, because they're a bank, right, and they do secret stuff that I'm not allowed to be part of, but you know, this secret thing was that the Commonwealth Bank generated a key pair somewhere. Someone sat on a machine and said, generate a key. And then they went to a company called Symantec. They're probably gone on a plane. They went to a company called Symantec and said, you know, here's our public key. Can you say it's our public key? Oh, and by the way, here's money. And Symantec said, well, thank you for your money. I'll mint a certificate for you in exchange for this money. You're the Commonwealth Bank. Now, I'd like to think there was more to it than that. I have no idea. Personally, no idea whatsoever. But the theory goes that they did enough stuff for Symantec to say that's the Commonwealth Bank of Australia and that's their public key. That's their key and nobody else's. So if I, unsuspecting victim, can associate that public key with the connection I'm making, so I hash using that public key and send it back. If they own the private key, if they can do the right thing, well, obviously it's the Bank of Australia. Commonwealth Bank of Australia, yes? So I'm trusting Symantec. I've never met them. Has anyone met them? They're a nice bunch of people. Can we, trust them. Are you from them? Yeah. I trust you. Well, obviously I trust you. You saw the evidence. I am just so into this, yes? So, hang on a second. This is the first time I've met you, and you've never met me. So why should I trust you? Good question. Turns out my browser trusts a lot of folk. So does yours. And you know, the beauty about English is that there are so many words to express stuff. So all these people are, to me, credible. My browser is trusting them. That's credibility. But you know, there's this other word, credulity. It's close but different, because that's such a big list that someone, and I reckon it's my browser, has flipped over the edge and gone from credible to credulous. Who does my browser trust? Trusts these people. In Google Blog, there was a certain naughty thing that happened with CNNIC where they went and certified some Egyptian folk to be star.google.com, who then used it to spy on other people's mail. Oops. And oddly enough, if you go to Chrome, you'll actually find CNNIC is not trusted anymore by Chrome. But I'm using Safari, so obviously nothing bad happens on Safari from CNNIC. No. Wow. Well, that's not all, of course, because if everyone remembers Komodo, I still trust them, because they're a nice bunch of folk. They're not Symantec, you see. And, you know, that's okay. Komodo really did have a problem, massively hacked. But I use Symantec, thank you. My bank uses Symantec, and Symantec never lie. You can see what's coming, can't you? Yeah, right. This happened almost by accident a couple of weeks ago, and it turns out that Symantec went and certified example.com. Now, you see, when I mean never, I really mean never, because that trust list was absolute. Because if they lied about one thing, what else did they lie about? I don't know. You don't know. How do they get into that list of trust? Because they never lie. But they are. And this can get really, really shitty. This can imperil people. When it goes bad and star.google.com gets taken down, folks start reading your email who shouldn't be. This is not the internet we need, want, or should tolerate. It's not good enough. So what's going wrong here? Now, Symantec may have slipped up, but it's not their fault. There's a deeper problem here, and it's right the way down in this TLS handshake. Because when I was offered that certificate saying I'm the Commonwealth Bank, it didn't say which of those 1,000 folk you trust is the one that issued that certificate. It did not say only use Symantec. It said if you can validate this thing, it's good. So any CA on my trust list could have validated that certificate. That's awesomely bad. That's just not bad. On a scale of 1 to 10, you're up there at awesomely great. This is so weird, right? Here's a lock to my door. It's a great lock. It looks fantastic. Any key will open it. Any key. It's only there for show. Just wave a piece of metal at it and the door will open. That is the foundation of security for the internet as you use it. You have no idea if the certificate you are being offered is fake or not, as long as one of the people who never lie, well, hardly ever, are willing to say it's a good certificate, you'll trust it. And if it's part of the hardly ever system, it's sort of, oh, well, tough. Good enough or shit? You see, part of the problem is there's no incentive for quality in this marketplace. Why should I pay more for a certificate when any CA can be the certificate authority for my name, right? Because I trust a whole bunch of people. 60 to 100 CAs, about another 1,500 folk of lesser repute, and there are folk out there who will do things for money and almost nothing else. There are so many different organisations, and I've just met the first one right now. I never met any of them before. They were all strangers to me, yet I trust them with my money, my house, my assets, my security, and so do you. Awesomely bad. Because quite frankly, in this market, quality doesn't matter. What wins is cheap. Because there's no point buying a super duper certificate when my browser trusts El Cheapo around the corner. You might as well get a certificate from them too, because it just doesn't matter. So what's winning is cheap in this market, and that's a problem. So what are we going to do about it? Well, we're nerds. If the problem is it's too cheap, let's make it cheaper. And so we have. Let's encrypt. Let's just drive all the money out of this whatsoever and get certificates for free. And if you think that's a bad thing, just wait and we'll find out. Because that's what's minting certificates like crazy today. Cheap is winning like nothing before. I have no idea, but it seems a bit weird that as long as I can write something on a web page, Let's Encrypt will issue me a certificate for that domain name. So you can't hack websites. Yeah, right, absolutely. Sorry. Credibility voodoo. I've just got to move on and believe, right? So do you all. Google had a better idea, and I think it's really fantastic. What they do is inside Chrome, as code compiled in, is a list of domain names and the certificate authorities that issued certificates for them. So now, even though, my friend Bird issued a certificate for star.google.com, Chrome won't believe it because it's on the magic list. Can I be on their magic list? Can you? Well, why not? It's a fantastic idea. It's totally awesome until you realise it scales like crap. Because obviously you can't list everyone. So, it's not exactly a scalable model of putting this stuff in code. List every single domain name that ever needs a certificate in Chrome every release. Yeah, right, go for it. So, when all else fails, there's only one answer, and you know it as well as I do. It's the DNS, because there is no problem the DNS can't solve. The DNS makes everything better and it never lies. So, option C, you just use the DNS. None of this rough consensus crap. You just put it in the DNS, because yes, we can. So, if you really want to know the public key of a domain name, why the hell aren't you asking the DNS for the public key of the domain name? Like, why do you trust Symantec, who hardly ever lie, when if you're after the DNS, go and ask the DNS for the key, right? Well, why not? It's a serious question. Instead of relying on compiled in code in Chrome, why don't I actually say, when I look up combank.com.au, by the way, here's a DNS record that says if you get a certificate, it should be signed by Symantec. DNS can tell me that, because the DNS is wonderful. So why don't we put the stuff in there? Hell, why not even actually do the issuer CA, not just the name, but actually do, this CA, this public key? And why don't we go further and actually do a hash of the certificate, because the DNS is truly awesome. And in fact, I'm really after that key, that public key that I'm going to use to session encrypt. It's not big. It's a lot smaller than a lot of the other crap we put in the DNS. So Christ, just put it in there. Isn't this a good idea? And why am I paying $75 to GoDaddy for a domain name that I only paid $6 for, all to get a certificate that anyone can lie about? I'm like, exactly what's going on here when I can do it myself in the DNS? So the answer truly is, you can do this. Go and read RFC 6698, because it's a really good thing to read. Except, of course, that we had some second thoughts, so go and read that one as well. It kind of corrects a bit of stuff. But it's actually then really, really easy. Because what I'm going to put in the DNS is a TLSA record, a TLS association record. And I've got choices. I can do a hash of the certificate. I can do a hash of the end entity certificate. I can even do a trust anchor. I can put something in the DNS that says, that certificate you got given, only trust it if you can find something that matches the TLSA record. If you can't, you're being presented with a certificate you should not trust, irrespective of your credulous browser and its universe of trust. Sorry, Symantec. How hard are these TLSA records to generate? Cut and paste. If you want an EE-cert TLSA, that's the OpenSSL command. Rocket science, yeah, right. Not in the slightest. Or maybe you just want to do the public key. Rocket science, yeah, right. It's an OpenSSL command. It was often said, that Emacs was the, Texas Chainsaw Massacre of editors. OpenSSL is the Texas Chainsaw Massacre of security. Anything you want to do with any aspect of security, there is an OpenSSL command. You just got to find it, but you can do it. You can cut down tall trees, you can do what you want with OpenSSL, and generating TLSA records, yeah, piss easy. So all of a sudden, TLSA with DANE kind of works. I get this server hello, I get basically a certificate, and then I go and query the DNS. And I go, should I believe this? And if I can validate against the TLSA record, then okay, well, you really were the Commonwealth Bank. Symantec weren't lying, you're the real deal. So that's the basic query, and if you want to do that, there's a little plug-in from our good folk at cz.nic. You can get your browser to educate itself about DANE. This is really cool. But, you might have noticed that, the DNS is full of awful people who lie. Naughty, naughty, naughty. And so all of this really, really hinges on the fact that we can fix the DNS, that lying is impossible. Well, it's called DNSSEC. And if you're not running it, you should be. So DNSSEC, do I need to go through this shit? It's just interlocking signatures without the cruft of X509. The root signs over this, signs over .com, signs over example, and so on and so forth. So when you get something, you go backwards to say, do all the keys interlock? Absolutely. One trust key. that key signing key that Ed Lewis talked about yesterday. One key and you can validate anything down in the DNSSEC chains. Brilliant stuff. Works fantastically well. As long as I have a valid local key, everything else just works. If I put the two together, I've actually got something really quite good. Because my browser might trust a lot of folk, as it does, but I can check that against what was in the DNS. The address is correct, DNSSEC said so, and the TLSA credentials I'm being presented with are correct or not because what's in the DNS that I authenticated said that I should believe it. Belts and braces. And at that point, it's actually looking pretty rock solid. Why did I need this plugin? Why isn't it there already? Well, you know, I'm a cynic. I'm sorry. I'm just am between you and me. And as far as I can see, these browser folk are obsessed by milliseconds. And that extra lookup, nah, not going to go there, too bloody slow. And somehow insecure and fast is magically much, much better than secure and a little bit slower. So the other thing that's always said is, no, we're not going to do this because DNSSEC doesn't really exist. How much DNSSEC is out there? 15% of the world validates. That's 50% more than the number of people in the world who does V6, by the way. Right? It's kind of, well, if you believe in the V6 dream, these guys are living it. DNSSEC is actually seriously out there. Comcast customer does DNSSEC. Use Google's public DNS, does DNSSEC. There is an awful lot of DNSSEC all over the world already, and if you aren't doing it in your resolvers, ask yourself why the hell you hate your customers. Because it's easy and it works and it creates a huge amount of capability in the DNS that you don't have otherwise. So DNSSEC is a good thing. But say, what about that slow stuff? If I've got to look up the DNS isn't exactly rocket fast, yes? But what you can do is to pre-guess what's going to happen. So in this TLS handshake, not only can it offer me a certificate, but it can offer me the DNSSEC answers I was going to get anyway. It's my trust key. I can take the answers given to me in this stapled TLSA record and go, do I like what I'm seeing in that certificate or not? No delay. Really fast. Really neat. There's a draft there. Say yes, get it through the IETF. It's a really bloody good idea. It's time it came out. Who's doing it? Mozilla. Get that, Chrome. Mozilla have now said, yeah, we're going to commit to this back in November. It's now been reopened, and Richard Barnes has said, I'm going to do it. And if Richard Barnes, if you're listening, you're on the hook, mate. I want to see this by summer, because this is really worth doing. Because at that point, despite the good effects of Symantec, and despite the fact that they hardly ever lie, if I had a TLSA record, I can check. And I can actually know in the instance of me going to my bank that they're not lying and it really is my bank. That's what I need. That's what you need. So we're in this frustrating position, and security is always like this. We could do a much, much better job. All of us could be signing our zones with DNSSEC. And again, I kind of look at this going, why aren't you? The stuff's 10 years old, get with it. We should really be thinking about TLSA records because CAs hit the news, hit the press all the time. There's so many of them that money always finds a way to corrupt it. And somehow that system is not watertight and probably never will be. We need something else to ensure that what we're seeing is real. Validate the answers. For God's sake, validate what you see. TLSA records will then guide that. And you know, the stuff will just work. How long does it take to do it? Well, you know, in my fantastic web assets too, I managed to get one of them up with TLSA and DNSSEC in basically an afternoon, so then I wrote about it. If you want to know how I did it, that's all I did. I used Let's Encrypt because, you know, they're so expensive. Not. So the certificate cost me nothing. OpenSSL is open source. Nothing cost me anything to do this, and around 2 hours from start to finish. Now, I'm not that good. I'm honestly not that good. I just bang the rocks together. You're good at this. You're the professionals. If it took me 2 hours, you should be able to do it for thousands of folk in a day, millions, because that's your job. Because if you can't make this shit trustworthy, if you can't say this works and works the way it's intended, you're wasting your time. You're pissing people off and you're creating vulnerabilities that the cyber folk will come along and fix afterwards at horrendous expense. Because the tools are here right now, use them. So that's all I can do, encourage you. And by the way, lean on Chrome and tell them to get with the act. If Mozilla can do it, for God's sake, Chrome must be able to do stapled security as well. Because realistically, 78% market share only exists if you keep up the contract with your customers, Chrome, to do the right thing. And if you drop that and say, look, I don't care, insecurity's fine, I don't think you deserve that much market share in the browser market. So if you're listening, Chrome, oh, they're everywhere, aren't they? So I don't need to look. Chrome, get with the act. That's about all I had. If there are any questions, I'd gladly take it, but thank you. None. None?
Videos do post to YouTube, so they do have...
All right, Chrome have the right of reply somehow. I expect my browser to collapse in a screaming heap with a blue screen of death any second now. Geoff, we've got you. Thank you.